Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is November 2nd, and right now we are looking at the infrared satellite imagery. You can see Washington, Oregon, British Columbia, cold frontal passage going on this morning. Some heavy rainfall across the region here overnight, last night, and in through this morning. And we've got some gusty winds along some of the Washington, Oregon coast as well. We'll take a look at that. And some blustery winds possible for Seattle and Portland right now. It hasn't showed up just yet, but they may be occurring here in the next hour or so. And you can see our next system across the Pacific Ocean out here, maybe actually be a bit of a windier system here as well. We'll take a look at those details and the extended forecast as always as we go through the video here today. Check out the wet and mild conditions starting to show up for the northern Rockies here as you go on in through Thursday and Sunday here. You're going to rise the snow levels here and finally scour out some of that cold air trapped in the valley. Some of the BC areas as well, getting some wintry precipitation, especially in some of the highway passes, the higher highways and whatnot across some of British Columbia there as well. Now, taking a look here at the day one excessive rainfall outlook, it does include the Cascades. This should be wrapping up for the coastal areas today. And then day two, we're going to start to bring this in, this next system that comes in. They've got some excessive rainfall potential here for the Oregon coastal range and up into the Olympics of Washington, Southwest Oregon as well. And if you guys want a nice affordable home weather station to record all this rain and wind that we get here in the Pacific Northwest, check out that link below. Click it for 10% off. Highly recommend that station. Now, here's the NAM 3 cam actually did quite well showing the gusty conditions across some of the coastal areas here. And if I put it into motion, you see it picks up some of that activity across maybe some of the Willamette Valley and Seattle. Actually called for a 40-mile-per-hour gust here. It's getting right near that time though, so I'm wondering about the delay a bit here. But you can see we did get some pretty strong gusts here, and I'll show you those readings here in a moment. You can see some of the higher terrain getting some gusts with that also. And if we scroll it a bit further here, you can actually see the next system approach here and bring in some pretty gusty winds with it as well. Maybe some of the Washington coast again, some of the waters here, the northwest interior also. But yeah, we'll watch that system as well. It's got a pretty good gradient with it. Also, no major region-wide windstorm or anything like that, but another round of some gusty winds for the coastal areas especially. This is the HRRR 3KM. This is accumulated max 10-meter wind gust as well. Goes out 48 hours. It does call for this mainly later in the afternoon, showing Seattle around the mid-30s here. And again, it did pick up the winds on the coast of Washington and Oregon quite well. Now, taking a look here at what we actually got, look at Astoria, 60 miles per hour. Cape Disappointment, 52. Down to the southwest of Rockaway Beach, 59 miles per hour. And if you look here, it looks like Hoquiam picked up a 60-mile-per-hour gust as well. Some 50s out there, some of the higher terrain, and some gusty winds along the coastline. And it looks like this wind is starting to make its way across some of Olympia and Tacoma, too. Some blustery winds out there also as this front passes through. And the Windy app still shows us arriving anytime here for the Pacific, not the Pacific, the Puget Sound area here. But again, hasn't showed up at my house just yet. The NAM has it starting up here. So watching that, just watch out for some of those blustery winds. No big windstorm. Now taking a look at the European as of yesterday on the left versus the GFS, which is the American model on the right. And 500 millibars is about 18,000 feet up in the atmosphere. This gives us a nice picture of the general ridge and trough position. You can see the state of Hawaii to the bottom left. You see British Columbia, Washington, Oregon here. So as we put that into motion, this is the system here that caused the gusty winds across the coastal areas and bringing the big precipitation amounts there. You can kind of see that phase through on the GFS and the European. Then you can see the next trough. Pretty good agreement, all things considered here as we go on in through this weekend. Couple more systems rolling through the area. Got to watch this one here for some wind potential, even a little bit further into the interior. Not a major windstorm though coming in, but again, another system rolls through. Then we get a break for maybe a day or two. European is stronger with this ridge, and this ridge means more fair weather here. We get one of the systems flowing through here, and we build that ridge, and then we bring some troughing back. And you can see the GFS and the European still showing strong troughing here as we go on in through the upcoming the next weekend there. They'll be looking about 10 days out here. But you can see the stormy pattern here looks to extend in towards the mid portion of November. But then you see some disagreements once we get out towards Fantasyland here as the GFS. It has a big ridge over the western USA, and the European, a huge troughing here. So they couldn't be at greater odds as you look out towards the 300-plus hour period. But that's why you take things with a grain of salt at that range. Taking a look at the European against the GFS, this is surface pressure. There goes the initial system. You can see that pressure gradient that brought the gusty winds. That system moving through. Next system hot on its heels here as we go on in through Friday. That precipitation will be arriving, and you can again see a fairly decent pressure gradient up and down Vancouver Island, some of the Oregon and Washington coastline here. A little bit more stout on the European on the left here versus the GFS, but a couple strong storms both showing up on the model there, and that's going to bring some additional heavy precipitation across the area. And then we get one more system here. We got to watch this one closely as well. This could again bring another gradient here to some of the Pacific Northwest. We'll watch that over the next few days for some blustery conditions. It doesn't look like an exceptionally strong storm here, but it does dive in towards the coastline a bit more here on the European, as you can see. So we get to watch that here over the next few days. Then you can see the ridge build on both models here as we go on into the mid portion of next week. So we may get a couple decent days or at least a break before additional systems start to make their way into the Pacific Northwest. Now, taking a look here at Astoria, you can see the European didn't do that well with last night's early morning wind here with this system making landfall, the cold front making landfall across the Pacific Northwest. It did not show that 60-mile-per-hour gust even in any of the ensemble members there. It did show the windy period here, but it did not pick up on the big gusts here. The NAM3 cam did much better with that, and you can see here that we have another windy period as we go on in through Saturday morning coming up. And if you look at the NAM3 KM as of this morning, it did pick up on some of those gusty winds, showed it about 50, 51 miles per hour, even though it did gust to 60. This is Tillamook here, so you got another couple rounds of wind coming up here and additional systems rolling through here. The storm train is going to keep rolling as we go through this weekend. This is Portland. It does show some gusty winds here as you go through this morning. So this may be occurring as I'm speaking right now, but nothing too crazy. You know, some mid-30s showing up. And the NAM was showing 40 for Seattle. Has not happened just yet. It's coming up on 9 o'clock now, right now, and it's just dead calm outside. So it may be starting to gust here in a little bit. This is Quileute. You can see the next system here starting to trend a little bit stronger here for some of the Washington coast. The European picking up on that. The control run had 46 miles per hour and some ensembles up over 50 miles per hour. And then you can kind of see the mixed bag of larger systems potentially out there as we go towards mid-November. Seattle Metro trending a little bit strong with this next system here as well. The European actually shows 38. So it'll be interesting to see what the NAM shows when it gets in range for this next storm. Here we go with the Seattle Metro. You guys probably heard the rain falling all night out there if you guys were in some of the Puget Sound area or heck anywhere across a lot of western Washington, northwest Oregon, British Columbia. And then you can see the next system pretty wet as well. You can see another 1.2 inches in a 24-hour period here as we go through the November 4th time period here. So what is it? It's Thursday, November 2nd. So you're talking about Saturday here. Another pretty rainy day. Probably starting to break up by the time you get in towards Saturday. But we'll look at that here in a moment. This is looking at the GFS 06Z. There's BC, Washington, Oregon. This is how we measure atmospheric rivers by the vapor transport in this. The strength of that vapor transport based on duration. And you can kind of see this initial one moving through here. Pretty progressive, though. It doesn't hang out for too long. And then the next system bringing another impressive fetch of moisture into the Pacific Northwest. It's a strong low-pressure system. Guides that precipitation into the region here. And you can see as we go off into the extended a little bit here, you can see the low-pressure system there with additional systems. Then we get a little bit of a break there. And this was the one where the European showed the stronger ridge between systems here. And the GFS wants to bring us additional systems in here as we go on into the mid portion, but really not worth looking out that far at this point. Just kind of showing you some fantasy stuff as the storms look to continue to roll in as we go through mid-November. Taking a look at the significant wave height, you can see we're getting a bit of a bump here as we go through today with some wave action on the coastline there. Nothing too incredibly huge, but you'll probably notice it as you go through the morning and afternoon hours today. Then we get a bit of a break here, but this next system is going to bring some even bigger round of waves here as we go through Saturday morning. So if you want to get out there and watch some waves, Saturday morning looks like a good time to do it. Just don't turn your back on the ocean. Make sure you're safe on any of the jetty or rockways out there along the coastal areas of Oregon, Washington, and Vancouver Island. Then you can see that system swing through and then another round of waves going on and through next week. Now looking at the 24-hour precipitation running total, so pretty darn rainy area here, morning here across a lot of northwest Oregon, western Washington, British Columbia. System moves through, but then quickly as we go through Friday night, you can see additional precip just come blasting in here, potentially bringing Seattle another inch in a 24-hour period here, and of course higher amounts across the higher terrain of the coastal areas and the Cascades as well. And then as we scroll through here, that next system rolls through early next week. Before we get a bit of a break here, as we saw the European showing that ridge build, but then another weak system, and then maybe additional powerful systems after that. We'll worry about that once we get a little bit closer. As you can see, things kind of chaotic on into the extended forecast. Now, looking at total precipitation on the GFS, let's just run this through here. It's just kind of fun to watch how much precipitation we may get here over the next couple weeks. As you can see, it just bombarding the Pacific Northwest on last night's GFS run here, over 6 inches by the time you get towards November 17th there for Seattle. Huge amounts across some of the higher terrain. So we got to watch out for flooding concerns with that as well. But we need the precipitation out here. As you guys know, we've been dealing with some drought conditions and very dry vegetation. This is Whistler, showing that we do have snowfall potential up there, and just kind of highlighting the fact that these afternoon highs are above freezing there. So you're going to be getting some melting, refreezing, and then additional snow falling up there. So kind of the time of year where we build some layers in the early season snowpack. Looking at snow depth, this kind of highlights that fact pretty well. As we go through some of these storm systems, you can see them come in, then you can see the snow melt back, like across the North Cascades, and another system rolls through, melts back a little bit. Another system rolls through. It's kind of that time of year where the sun is still a little bit, a tiny bit relatively strong, I should say. And so we can melt a little bit of that snow because, it's still only early November right now. But then you see as we go through the month of November, that snow depth starts to build in a little bit better here as we go out towards the mid portion there. You can see that's the beginning of the run and then the end of the run there, for example. Now, taking a look at the 8 to 14 day, above average generally. And don't even really have to mention it here, but above average showing up there as we go through November 15th in the 8 to 14 day. This is a slight risk of some high winds. Again, we'll just be watching these systems day at a time, and you'll be the first to know if we have potential for a region-wide windstorm. If you continue to check in with me daily, we will watch this and we will break it down. We will not be surprised here on the channel for any kind of regional big windstorm here. So continue to check back, and you can see that risk goes all the way down into California here as well. And this is the drought monitor. I believe I showed this yesterday. We should be improving on some of the drought conditions here across western Washington, Oregon. However, a little bit different story across some of the Cascades here. So we continue to need this precipitation up across some of the higher terrain. And this is looking at the drought monitor. Was actually released today, but a lot of this is going to be improving, as I mentioned. And just, I showed this yesterday as well, and I talked about it in the live stream a little bit last night, Vegetation Drought Response Index, just showing you that we really need this precip. As you can see, a lot of the vegetation around the state of Washington, and you can see if you zoom in a little bit more, you can really see some of that moderate and severe drought, and that pre-drought stress is out there in Oregon as well. Idaho, no exception there also. So anyway, we'll continue to watch these storms. We'll watch these roll in, and we'll try to pick out any windier systems. But the next one looks like it might pack up a bit of a punch here, and we'll be watching that closely along the coastal areas. It'll bring some big waves as well. Another big round of precipitation across the area. As you can already see, it's nice fetch of moisture here. Pretty strong storm out here. Going to develop into probably a sub 980 millibar low, which is a pretty strong storm out over the Pacific Ocean just off the coast of Vancouver Island. So we'll watch that one closely on in through tomorrow. But yeah, thanks for everybody who joined the live stream last night. Hope you guys are having a good day. We'll do this again tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys then.